Hey everybody, it's Brian Fleming from MarriageBattlePlan.com, where we help you communicate clearly with your spouse so your marriage will make it. That's right, marriage does not have to suck. And this is something I do with my wife Jamie, who's not in this video today, but I wanted to share with you something that I hear a lot. And over time, sometimes we hear pieces of advice that sound good, and maybe they are in some cases, but not in all cases. And sometimes you can take good marriage advice, but it's not true in every scenario, and it can actually damage your marriage. And so I want to share one of these really common pieces of marriage advice that just isn't that good. Now, in some cases, it can be, but not in all. And most people don't see the other side, the flip side of that coin, which is why I want to share that with you today, so you don't end up becoming a victim of it. Now, everybody's going to have an opinion on this. I promise. You're probably going to have an opinion that either agrees with me or, well, I guarantee you're going to have an opinion that either agrees or disagrees with me. But hear me out on this, not for my benefit, but for yours, or maybe for somebody you know. All right, so growing up, I've got some notes here, by the way. Growing up, I was always told that good relationships are hard work. Good relationships are hard work. So when I think of hard work, I think of climbing mountains, fighting terrorists in Afghanistan at 12,000 feet and it's 130 outside. Wearing 100 pounds of body armor and equipment. I think of hard work. I think of those guys roofing houses here in Texas in August when it's 110 outside, 12 hours a day. Carrying that stuff up and down the ladder, the shingles, they weigh 90 pounds each. That's hard work. I don't think good relationships take hard work. I don't. I think bad relationships take hard work. Now, here's what I don't mean. I don't mean that good relationships don't take effort. But to me, there's a very big difference between effort, which is just exerting any amount of force or effort, and hard work. Because if you've been in a bad relationship, you know what hard work feels like. All right, and so make the distinction there. There's a difference between effort, because I would never say that good relationships don't take effort. That's just a lie. But bad relationships, and here's the deal. Maybe you have a pretty good relationship, but it's still taking hard work. So here's what I would say is probably the case. May not be, but probably the case. You may overall have a pretty good relationship. But if you're having to work really hard in one or two areas, you're probably not that healthy in those one or two areas. You might be bad or in a toxic situation with your spouse in one of those one or two areas that you're particularly struggling with. All right, so that might be why you're having to work so hard. All right, now I've been married over 14 years, and my wife will tell you this as well. When I say this, my wife and I do not work hard on our marriage. We don't. Our marriage has never been hard work. It's never been hard work. We've had challenges together, but we've gotten through them. And here's the thing. Here's where it becomes hard work. When you and your spouse are against each other because of an external or internal situation that one or both of you are dealing with. It's when you're fighting each other instead of the common enemy. In the Marriage Battle Plan program at MarriageBattlePlan.com, we talk about how to identify your common enemy so you can destroy that common enemy together and stop trying to go at each other because you think the other one is the real enemy, and it's not. All right? So think about this. I want to share with you some qualities of a good relationship. I want to share, and this isn't like exhaustive. This is not an exhaustive doctoral thesis on qualities of a good marriage, but these are just like 4 or 5 things that constitute a pretty healthy and good marriage. And if you have these things present in your marriage right now, you probably are not having to work at it very hard. And if you're lacking some of these, you're probably having to work very hard, harder than you need to. And again, you have 2 human beings involved here, so that's why this gets difficult, all right? But here are some values of a good relationship. Mutual respect. Here's the deal. When you respect somebody, you tend to treat them well. If somebody mentored you growing up and you just have this tremendous amount of respect for them, you would never get mad and shout at them. You would never hit them for no apparent reason, or degrade them, or bash them publicly, or try to make them feel better, manipulate them. Why? Because you respect them. If you have respect for your spouse, you're going to have an easier time here. You're going to treat them well. Now, if you abuse your spouse, whether it's physical, verbal, sexual, whatever, if you abuse your spouse, you do not respect your spouse. You do not have respect for your spouse because you will never abuse somebody you have respect for. I'm not saying people don't make mistakes, but if you have a very high esteem and respect for somebody, you're not going to abuse them. You're going to treat them well. So that's the first thing. Mutual respect. The second thing, the second quality of a good relationship is transparency. And here's the deal. This is what this means, and a lot of you are going to relate to this. You know that you can talk to your spouse about anything without fear of repercussion. And I know a lot of you watching this, you don't have that in your relationship. In fact, maybe you and your spouse are both watching this and you're thinking to yourself, we don't have that. We want that. But how do I talk to my spouse to get them to the point where we can have that agreement, where we can have that kind of relationship? Well, it starts with you. Especially traditionally, I'm a traditional person in a lot of ways, a conservative person in a lot of ways. If you're the man in your marriage, it's your job. You take the first step. In the military, whenever you're going on a mission or something has to be done, we have this thing where leaders go first because you have to lead by example. If you're not doing it, you can't be mad that your wife or your kids or somebody who's under you, so to speak, and I don't mean that, don't even take it the wrong way, but if you're the leader, all right, and you're not setting the example and you're not going first, which takes some humility, that's one big reason you're probably having an issue here. If your spouse is afraid to talk to you about something because of fear of repercussion or what you might say or do, you're the problem. You have to set that expectation so that she knows. I'm talking from a man's perspective here because I'm a man. You have to set that precedence where she knows she can come and talk to you. If you don't set it, then she's probably going to assume she can't. And if you've had trouble in the past, then you're probably going to have trouble here too. So, transparency. It's the second quality of a good relationship. All right. Third, benefit of a doubt. Give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. If something goes wrong or they do something, it's probably the case that they're not trying to be malicious and take a shot at you. Maybe they are. Maybe they're trying to get back at you. Maybe that's very possible, and it happens. But when you give people the benefit of the doubt, they don't feel cornered as much, and you can usually have a lot more productive of a conversation that can end more productively and in a healthy way rather than just taking shots at each other. All right, so maybe what they said or did, maybe it wasn't intentionally against you, and if you assume those things are against you every time, you're going to have strife in your marriage. You're going to have this roughness. All right, so mutual respect, transparency, benefit of the doubt. Seek to mentor or guide your spouse. Whether you're the man or the woman, everybody's trying to get somewhere. Everybody's trying to do something. Everybody wants to have a certain kind of life or marriage, or they want to do something or get somewhere. When you're somebody who takes on the mentoring role, people tend to like you more, and they tend to cooperate with you more. It's like the difference between a good leader and a bad leader. A bad leader is a dictator. Telling people to do things out of fear. If you don't do this, you see this everywhere. It's because they're bad leaders. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying they have very poor leadership skills. They're bad leaders. There's a time where you have to threaten things, but that's usually a last case scenario. But a good leader is a mentor. It's a guide. A good mentor shows you how to get from where you are to where you want to be. They help you get there. Whether they know the way or not, they're at least there to help you and support you and assist you. So if you're the man in your relationship, if you're the husband, find out what your wife wants out of your marriage, out of life, out of your family, and mentor her in that. Help her to get that. And if you're the wife, do the same thing for your husband. When two people are giving toward each other, there's not as much strife. There's not as much chaos. There's not as much bickering. All right? So, the fifth one is sacrificial. Now, this has a lot of weird connotations to it, and people think things, but basically, be willing to sacrifice some of yourself to help your spouse out. Now, some of you are thinking, well, what if I sacrifice and then he doesn't? Or he's thinking, what if I sacrifice and I keep doing it, or I'm always the one sacrificing? And then she's not returning it. She's not returning the favor. I get it. That's frustrating. This is why I always say, though, starts with you, men. because I see men as the head of the household. It's just traditionally how I was raised and how I believe, and men tend to be leaders. It's just kind of how we are in our DNA. There are a lot of great women leaders out there, though. Many great female leaders, so don't take that the wrong way. I'm talking in very traditional sense here. But be sacrificial. When two people are willing, they know the other person is willing to sacrifice for them, to help them for their benefit. You like 80% of your relationship problems go away. All the drama, the propaganda that goes through your head when something happens, whatever, if it's from them or it's an external thing, and you have to band together as a team, everything just gets better when you have mutual respect for each other. You've agreed you can be transparent with each other without getting angry at each other. This is a very important skill. Have that discussion about being transparent. I've literally told my wife, you can tell if she comes to me and says, hey, I want to tell you something, I'm afraid how you're going to respond. I immediately tell her, whatever you're about to say, I want to hear it and I need to hear it. And I promise I won't get mad. I have to hold up to that promise, by the way, no matter what comes out the gate. It's like in the movie Gladiator. He's in the arena with those other gladiators, and he says, men, whatever comes out of those gates, be ready. It's whatever comes out of those gates, gladiators, tigers, whatever. But I have to live up to my word and have some integrity and honesty with that. And it's almost never as bad as I thought it was. And even if it is, we can't productively get through it if I start getting mad and yelling or shouting or anything like that. I screw this up. We still screw this up sometimes. But most of the time we get it right. And it's so good for our marriage. Mutual respect, transparency, give your spouse benefit of the doubt, seek to mentor and guide your spouse, and be sacrificial. All right? Find out what they want. Be willing to sacrifice some things because they'll naturally want to reciprocate that to you. And if you need a starting point, I say, men, it starts with you. Now, women, you can start it too. But traditionally, again, I just say it starts with men. So when both people do these things, you're going to have such a better relationship. I've been married over 14 years. And again, my wife will tell you, like, our marriage is not hard work. We've been through war. I was injured by a suicide bomber in war. The recovery from war, my God, that was long. The effects of war, post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, all this stuff we've had to deal with. Then her past and things that she's been through. I mean, you pile that on top of it. Her and I were married 3 months before I went to Afghanistan, and we met on the internet like a year before I left. This was before people were meeting on the internet back in 2004. All right, so like we've been through it. This isn't like happy-go-lucky BS marriage advice that sounds happy and cuddly. Like we've had to live in this gunfight, this ambush called marriage. But it's just never been that hard because we've done some of these things. So I want you to think about this. I'm wrapping this up because I don't want it to go too long. But I even have another friend who is of a completely different belief system than me. Great guy, one of my best friends, different belief system than me. I'm a person of faith. He's of a different persuasion, different belief system. And it's amazing. We have such a good friendship. And these things apply in that friendship as well. That's one reason we get along so well. I'm never trying to be right. Whenever we talk about faith, he talks about what he doesn't know or questions he has about faith that he doesn't understand. If I don't know the answer, I don't try to convince him. I just tell him I don't know, but I'd love to check it out. We have this very open-minded friendship, and it's great. In fact, he even told me one time his wife is from a totally different culture on the other side of the world, and they're opposites in so many ways. And he said, a lot of people say, you need to be a lot alike to have a good marriage. But he actually says in his marriage, the fact that they're so different is actually a good thing because they're open-minded people and they're willing to do a lot of these things I've talked about here today. And it's the fact that they have these differences that is actually their strength. But they connect first. They connect and then they realize their differences. So to wrap this up, two people who act these ways toward each other are generally going to have a pretty good relationship. So I say again, this is controversial. You'll probably come up with a scenario. Some of you will because you're like me and you're going to try to find the one scenario where, this isn't true or it's not true in my marriage and you probably had a bad experience and I get it. But good relationships are not hard work. Bad ones are hard work. Good relationships require some effort, different levels based on where you're at in life, but it's not hard work. And if you're having to work hard in your marriage, really hard, you probably don't have a good relationship. Or if you do have a good relationship, but you have one or two areas that are just a grind, it's probably because you're lacking in those one or two areas and it's just not healthy. And now you know what you need to address and to get those healthy so you don't have to work so hard at them. There's a lack of communication there somewhere. And I want to help you find that. Jamie and I want to help you find that so you don't have to end up in divorce court. All right? Because, I mean, I've never been divorced, but everyone I know who's been divorced, they say it's basically said to be the single greatest financial liability and loss the average person will ever incur. And so not just the financial, but you can't see your kids every day, only on the weekends. You lose friendships, community. Sometimes you lose your job or career, reputation. It's bad. And I agree, some people just shouldn't be together. It's true that it doesn't always work out. But if you can avoid all of that, do it. Do everything you can. Take all these videos and apply them and just see what happens. Look, if what you're doing isn't working right now, why not try something else? You don't have anything to lose. All right, so when you know how to get on the same page with your spouse, you're not going to have to work as hard. Now, if you want more information, you want more great videos like this, just go to marriagebattleplan.com, where we teach you how to communicate clearly with your spouse so your marriage will prosper. Again, hashtag this, marriage doesn't have to suck, all right? It doesn't have to, but there's some things you can do to make it better if you're struggling in one or two areas. Good relationships are not hard work. Bad ones are. And if you have a bad area of your relationship and it's a good one, then it's extra hard work. Zero in your sights of your weapons, so to speak. Get shoulder to shoulder with your spouse and attack that common enemy together. I'll see you over at marriagebattleplan.com.